Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. I am Pasta Jardula.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Johnny Sue is on those ones and twos. And today on the couch, we have a special guest for Candidate Month. When you say Stacey Abrams, I'll say Stacey Evans. And when you say Beto O'Rourke, I'll go, Sema Hernandez. Sema Hernandez is a daughter of immigrants. She's a mother of 4. She's worked in healthcare for a long time. And she's joining us here on the show for her second time around. How you doing, Sema?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We're very excited to have you. We've heard so much about you. We've seen so much about you on Twitter, on social media. You're always killing it there on Twitter. So, yeah, how's it going so far for you? Busy time?
It's extremely busy, and we know that we're about less than 50 days from the primary. Early voting begins February 18th here in Texas, and it's a statewide election. And for the second time around running, we have the media suppression of our campaign, and we know that they're only upholding those who can raise millions of dollars because they're interested in the ad buying from those candidates,
Right?
And they know that I'm not going to buy into their patriarchal system of oppression.
Yeah.
And you're in Texas, so give us 3 issues and why you're actually running, because obviously you are not in the easiest state for any Democrat to win, let alone a leftist progressive.
Well, number one, it's environmental justice, and that comes along with the Green New Deal. As many of you have followed me on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, you may have seen that the reason why I care so much about the Green New Deal and environmental justice is because I live in a sacrifice zone. I live literally 6 blocks away from ITC, which holds a lot of the petrochemical industry, refinery chemicals, and we live essentially in the belly of the beast of the petrochemical industry in Texas. We call this area the Petro Metro. And all of the petrochemical industries are situated, all of their CEO buildings are in downtown Houston. And if you all remember, during Harvey, we flooded. There was a lot of emissions that were released during the hurricane. Y'all may or may not have seen my posts of me rescuing people as the floodwaters were rising. You may or may not have heard during ITC that I evacuated my family, and I formed a environmental justice coalition with other environmental activists in the city of Houston to mobilize the people, to have town halls and forums to inform them of their rights, provide them with legal counsel if they needed it. We also brought the needs to the people, the needs of the people, to the county commissioner's court so that they can better implement safety protocols to ensure that the petrochemical industry, if there is another one, because we know this is a ticking time bomb, there's another petrochemical industry disaster, that we know how to better prepare our area. It is unreasonable to have such a huge area full of refineries and even fertilizer plants, and there isn't even a level 1 trauma center near the area to care for if there is massive casualties. And because I've worked in healthcare, I'm better able to understand and triage a situation, not just look at the symptom, but look at the ripple effects that it would have in our communities. So the Green New Deal is important to protect the workers in the refineries. It's better to implement jobs to transition the petrochemical industry, the fossil fuel industry, to a green economy. It would stabilize the economy locally and statewide, of course, nationally and internationally when it comes to foreign affairs. It would bring some, if not a lot, of equity in our areas and infrastructure and good paying jobs, unionization of jobs, prioritizing unions and local businesses to ensure that they get the contracts before the corporations do. So this is a huge deal for me and for the people of Texas who have not seen something like this before that would impact them directly, rather than having to be unemployed because the petrochemical industry is not a stable industry. A lot of people find themselves on the other side of the unemployment line. And Medicare for All is another one that I campaigned on in 2018. And I have firsthand account of how the healthcare system works. I have firsthand knowledge of the insurance industry because I was also an insurance agent. I have firsthand knowledge on patient care, and I am a patient and a mother of 4 kids. So to live in the wealthiest country in the world and not have the most basic human right as, healthcare, like every other developed country in the world, and to see this kind of poverty rate and the death, the mortality rate in this country is abominable. It's ridiculous to be going through that. Just the other day, I found a lump in my breast, and sitting here not having health insurance, wondering, what am I going to do? How am I going to seek those services? And wondering, how long can I prolong without having a screening? That's pretty scary for just me. And I can only imagine what other people go through when they do not have health care. And a lot of us don't have it. And with Medicare for All, Senate Bill 1129, that guarantees that we will have access, because it will be affordable, because it won't cost us a damn penny. And another one, of course, would be ending all the wars, ending the war economy altogether. And that is important to ensure that we are no longer in a position of poverty that causes our youth to go into the military, which we know far too often that happens, and putting us in these endless wars that perpetuate the climate crisis. And we all know that these wars are being coordinated and orchestrated for the Earth's resources in countries that are predominantly Black and brown and different religions.
Yep.
You don't ever see us invading Canada. You don't ever see us invading Denmark.
Yeah.
So, we're pushing these economic sanctions in Venezuela and and in Iran, and we don't need this kind of escalation of our military and imposing those sanctions.
Yeah.
There's another reason why I support fair trade deals.
Yeah. Well, I
know I've covered a lot.
No. That was the 3. We said we got a universal health care, a Green New Deal, universal health care, ending all wars.
Medicare for all, yeah.
Medicare for all. And you understand, I mean, if you watch this show, you would know how we stand on foreign policy, how important to us. And in the beginning of my opening monologue, I talked about Stacey Abrams, and I kind of transitioned to Stacey Evans, because you were kind of like that whole part of that. When people go, oh, they got so hyper-focused and amazed by Beto O'Rourke, I was like, y'all don't know about Sema, or Sema, whatever you want, however you want to say her name, but Sema, you guys didn't know about her. She was the true progressive running in this race. However, I'm a progressive that really cares about my civil liberties. So I believe we're putting the cart before the horse with some of these issues when it comes to a Green New Deal, Medicare for all. Where do you stand on protecting our civil liberties?
Well, that is extremely important, to protect our civil liberties. What we have to do is ensure that we do have the voting rights in this country, that we do protect the rights of the LGBTQ community, and that we enact the ERA to ensure that we are protecting the rights of women, as well as transgender women and transgender men. That doesn't happen in this country. In the state of Texas, our civil liberties are being stripped away by our state legislator, by our governor. But at a federal level, we have to ensure that we are no longer in that position, and that we write any kind of legislation under the 14th Amendment where we have equal protection under the law. And that is something that I'm going to do, and I'm going to govern in that way.
Do you want to expand on that, Pasa?
Well, I mean, I know that you're definitely, your campaign is witness some suppression. You know what I'm saying? You got a lot of stuff out there. They're going to keep you down. They did last time. They put forth their establishment candidate like a Beto, and they're going to do it this time. So when I talk about our civil liberties, I'm talking to somebody I know who was suppressed and whatnot. Is there? How do you feel about Google and Facebook with these nefarious actions? And I know you, for a fact, were a victim of some of these practices.
Well, I don't buy Facebook ads, because I know that you have to meet some sort of threshold in order for your ads to be disseminated to the public. I do not go through Google. I do not buy Google ads. How I overcome those obstacles is by word of mouth and continuing to generate the momentum that we did in 2018 and just expand on that. So a lot of people ask me, how did I get that many votes in 2018? And I said, well, the media didn't care. We didn't have any endorsements. Nobody cared about what we were doing. So we used our networking and people skills to get the word of mouth out, to use underground messaging, using Signal, using Slack, and just ensuring that we are in all of the Facebook groups that we can be to disseminate information. Now, as far as how the media treats us. They are only considering those who are raising enough money as serious candidates. They do not look at the platform or the issues or where we stand or what we do. They care about more how much money we raise and how good we look on an ad. So
Exactly.
I have not completed certain voting guide questionnaires because of the way the questions are framed. So when they ask me, how much money have you raised? I said, it doesn't really matter how much I raise, because you can raise all the money in the world, $80 million, set it on fire and lose to Ted Cruz.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. I'm going to shift really quick and talk a little bit about last time around, Beto O'Rourke was your main opponent. A lot of people considered him a, quote, progressive. We realized he really wasn't like a grassroots type of candidate. I feel like the term progressive has been co-opted by the establishment, and now they're all putting on this label of, oh, I'm a progressive. I feel similarly about your opponent, Cristina Sanzun Ramirez, who changed her name several times to what appears to me, in my personal opinion, to sound more Hispanic. She is being backed by many who worked for Beto O'Rourke and many consultants. How do you feel about this sort of co-option, and also how do you plan to defeat an opponent like her who is a mirror of another Beto O'Rourke?
Well, I'm pretty secure in who I am, so you won't see me changing my name to try to fit a label.
Right.
And in 2018, and I'm going to keep going back to that because, again, the media, including the Democratic Party in Texas, said that I won the south part of Texas because of my surname, my last name. And so that is diminishing the intelligence of Latinos in Texas. It diminishes the Latinos of any somewhat or so-called minority. And in the articles where, holy crackers, sorry, in the articles where Tsunami Ramirez is featured in, it says that she was recruited primarily to get the Latino vote out. So, that already tells me that it's identity politics.
Right.
And so I campaign on inclusiveness. I ensure that I'm inclusive, and I talk about the issues, not just on the surface with word salad and talking points. I'm actually offering solutions and talking about policy. I do confront the issues head on. Till this day, she has not apologized for saying that her name seen soon is more Mexican than any Lopez or Garcia. She hasn't apologized to me. She hasn't apologized to the other candidates who are Latinos in the race. And I'm throwing the phone across the room because it's loud. So for me, it's continuing to campaign on policy, because my identity is not going to guarantee me any votes. My gender is not going to guarantee me any votes. What's going to make me a serious, formidable candidate is focusing on policy. Yeah. So she can campaign however she wants. And to my knowledge, word on the street, boots on the ground, say that this election is going to head into a runoff, and I will be facing off with MJ Hager, who is not showing up to any of the events. And she's only showing up to events in which there is fundraising or people have to pay to get in. So what does that tell you? For her, it's all about money. For me, it's all about the issues. It's all about the people. And although, she's considered the front runner, she's been endorsed by the DSCC or the
Triple C.
That one. There's just so many Ds.
Yeah.
She's not showing up. In order to win in Texas, you have to show up. It's not about fundraising. People don't care about that. So I show up and I talk about the issues, and I run my campaign based on those issues.
Yeah.
And we've seen colonizers before, so that's nothing new to me.
Yeah. Well, what do you do to get that kind of like Beto O'Rourke centrist kind of, liberal kind of voter who might not be a Latino person, whatnot, might be just, a regular run-of-the-mill voter? Like, how do you poach from that Beto O'Rourke pool to get you over the top this time?
Okay, so one, that he campaigned to get as many votes as possible, but once he won the primary, he went to the right. I'm not trying to get Republican voters. If it happens, it happens, but I appeal to the human being, to the basic human rights that every person wants. And at the end of the day, everyone wants to ensure that they have a home, they pay the bills, they're comfortable, they have days off. They're not constantly working 3 to 4 jobs a week and being without food or healthcare or basic needs such as breathing clean air and clean water. Those are all the basic things that I campaign on. So what I do is I appeal to the human, not the label, not the Republican, not the Democrat, but I appeal to the human being and talk about the issues. I go as far as giving them my personal number and telling them to call me if they have any issues or they have any questions. And that helps form a bond and trust in me as a candidate, that they can pick up the phone and call me whenever. And if I don't answer, I will text them back or I will call them back eventually. That's the difference between me and other candidates who are surrounded by entourage and have campaign handlers. Our campaign is grassroots, and when you call me, you'll either get me or one of our campaign staff, but it'll usually be me.
So you're not like obviously gonna shift your perspective to placate or pander to the right, same as you wouldn't do it for the establishment part of the Democratic Party. But how do you plan on winning such a red state if you know, you don't get any of those? Do you think it's possible to convert some of those people by simply talking to them human to human? How would you deal with a Republican that doesn't like Donald Trump and that is looking for maybe some inspiration?
So just the other day I was at the grocery store, because yes, I do my own grocery shopping. And I spoke to the cashier and he said, you know, do you have your card to get a discount? I said, yeah. He says, I'm sorry, I'm taking all your money. I looked at him, I said, you're not taking my money. The company is taking my money and giving you a very low wage. I said, it would be a little bit different if you had a living wage. And so we got into a conversation about taxes. Turns out he's a Republican who said that he's really upset with the Democrats in power because all they want to do is raise taxes. I said, you know what? I don't like taxes either, especially when they're being misused and misappropriated. And then he said, that is exactly my problem. If you're going to raise taxes, at least let the taxes go to serve the needs of the people, not the industry and corporations. So what that tells me of this young Republican is that he cares about how our money is being used and how his lifestyle is because of the lack of security or safety net, social safety nets. And getting the average Republican to come out and vote for me, boy, I can tell you the many times I've gotten into a political discussion with a preacher and a pastor. And I start quoting the Bible. And it gets very interesting. He says, I have no idea what you're talking about. I said, of course you do. You're a pastor, you're a preacher. And I know some of the verses. I don't know the book, you know, frontwards and backwards. But I can tell you, singing in the choir, that I picked up a sermon or two, and that I can have a debate with anyone, including a John Cornyn type of a Republican, to go head to head against his hypocrisy and his misrepresentation of what the Word of God is. And typically that's what you get with a lot of these Republicans who are staunch Trump supporters.
Right.
But as time goes on, people are disillusioned with what he is and what he's about.
Exactly.
They feel bamboozled.
Yeah.
What about when you're talking about bamboozling? I feel that our elections are always bamboozled. We use this word around here called fugazi. Well, I use it. It's Italian American for fake, whatnot. And I can tell you what happened in California last time. Fugazi. Florida. We're from Florida. A lot of times, bad elections. So with that being said, election integrity, I'm very big advocate for it. Where do you stand on election integrity? And is there any bills in Congress floating around right now that you might want to stand behind?
I believe that there is a bill in the House that expands on voting rights and ensures that there's automatic voter registration. If I'm not mistaken, it's HR 1 that I would stand by. And I if y'all want to correct me, that I would welcome that, because again, I'm not embarrassed about being wrong, but I'm always available to learn something new. In the state of Texas, I know that Harris County has expanded voting locations to one location at just about every other block. Anyone can go in and vote as long as you live in the county. What I would like to see is automatic voter registration across the board in the state of Texas, and for there to be transparency with who is providing the voting machines, and that there is a record or receipt that is made public and that cannot be altered. That's one of my main issues is that. What I would also like to see, much like there is in the state of Florida, is voting in prisons, And just because you're incarcerated doesn't mean you lose your ability to vote.
Yep.
Your basic right to vote. You know, these are basic things that we need to do and to ensure that everyone is represented, even if you're incarcerated. People who have been who've already done their time have voting constraints because they cannot vote if they're ex-felons, or there's a time limit on it. And in Texas, we've seen a woman who was arrested for voting, and she now has to be in jail for, I think, 6 years in Dallas.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I believe we need to work on our elections in general. If we recall what happened in 2016, you know, a lot of that was blamed on Russia, but the reality was that a lot of that was the Democratic Party infringing upon the rights. This doesn't just happen with Republicans. This obviously happens with Democrats as well. So I definitely believe we need to secure our elections, especially within a presidential election coming up. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and do a little bit of foreign policy. What is your opinion on our situation with Iran? Is Iran really our enemy?
No, I don't think Iran is our enemy. I think our enemy is the corporations that take hold of our government, that utilize our military to invade other countries for their natural resources.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great answer. I mean, bottom line, the military industrial complex are the ones making these decisions, and those are the corporations. So do you think Maduro or Juan Guaido is the Democratic elected leader of Venezuela?
Maduro. I do not support Guaido, and I rebuke anyone who does.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Do you you obviously don't support the sanctions then?
Right.
No.
Yeah. What do you think should be done to people within our own government? Do you think that people that within our own government, like people like, for instance, Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio, people who kind of really backdoor the Bolivian coup, how should they be held responsible for their actions?
I think it's treason. I think that they commit treasonous acts that get, first off, they do this on purpose to get us into these types of battles that endangers our national security, and that within itself I consider treason.
No. Where do you stand on impeachment?
Ooh, that's a good one. I've been waiting on his impeachment since he got sworn in. Emoluments clause would have been one that I would have added from the get-go, but that hasn't appeared yet.
Yeah.
And
we know
as
why.
it is right now, I'm waiting to see what the evidence is going to be. And I wish that the Republicans in the Senate would remain impartial. Instead, Mitch McConnell has already set the tone for how this hearing is going to go by saying that he's going to coordinate with the White House and White House counsel. And that means that he is already going to vote in favor of Trump instead of actually siding with what the law should be.
Yeah. Well, the Democrats didn't run the straightest kind of the most transparent hearing in the House as well. So I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot as well. So
you mentioned the emoluments would have been something that they should have used, but they won't do that because it would inculpate them as well.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why we have this system where, you know, they like to play team A and team B, but really they're just one big team against the people. What is do you believe there's a left versus right situation going on into 2020, or do you believe in class warfare versus just these corporations? Is it us? Is it a two-party system, or is it just really like the poor working against the oligarchs?
It's always been a class war. It's always been a movement between the working class and the elitist class. They just happen to be wearing two different types of jerseys playing for the same team. And I want to go back to the impeachment. If this specific impeachment hearing doesn't go through, what the House can do is impeach Trump because he violated Congress by killing Soleimani, what's his name? Soleimani, without congressional approval. And that alone should be an impeachable offense.
Yeah. We would think that, but therefore the Democrats stood by and allowed us to label the Iran Revolutionary Guard as terrorists. None of the Democrats said anything. So now with that language being a terrorist, the AUMF allows him to go kill him. Now, I'm in agreement with you ladies here, too, as well. I thought we should have been able to impeach him on war crimes when it came to the Syrian situation. However, I just find it very hard for us to hold this president accountable when the same people who are trying to prosecute him are guilty of the same crimes.
Right.
And
I
if
think
he's
it's just
deemed
a
insane, do not fund the NDAA and give him free reign on that.
Exactly.
188 of them. Yeah.
Right. As well as reauthorizing the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
FISA court, they gave him powers in the FISA court. They've enabled this president every step of the way.
Yeah.
And on that note, corruption. What is your opinion of the latest situation between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders? Elizabeth Warren, who was up until a few days ago, touted as a progressive, as somebody that should be upheld to almost the same regard as Bernie Sanders. You know, the CFPB, that she fought Wall Street and fought the banks and all of this. And then what is your opinion on how she has treated Bernie Sanders and how the media has also played a role, the mainstream media, in that?
Well, like I said, I'm used to colonizers and people coming into one are, this native land and slaughtering indigenous peoples, but now it's coming into the progressive movement and essentially colonizing it and appropriating every single plan on there as your own, and then saying that you're the most progressive candidate. Or claiming something that you're not is pretty insulting to the progressives who've been here building this movement for years. So, look, what happened during the debate, I was just sitting and watching back, and I said, I cannot believe this is happening. But it happened, and this is a wake-up call to the progressives who are in this for the actual movement building and ensuring that not that we just remove Trump, but we undo all the damage that all these neoliberal candidates or electeds have been doing to our country by, stripping away our rights. So we have to get behind someone who is doing that and who has the record of doing so, and that is Bernie Sanders. And that's why I endorsed him, and I supported him in 2016. I support him now. I've endorsed him. I've campaigned for him. I've thrown watch parties for him when I was asked to do so by his campaign. And that's who I'm going to get behind every step of the way. And if there is any unity within the progressive movement, then the unity should be behind Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. So it's a hard no on Elizabeth Warren, then, right? Is that what I'm getting at? It's a no? It's a hard no. Okay. With that being said, do you want to follow up before I go to this question here or no?
Oh, no.
Because obviously she's supporting Bernie Sanders for president.
Yeah. I mean, no, that's enough said on that. I mean, it just speaks for itself, I guess, the action.
Yeah, we were all sitting here shaking our heads, too, as well. But, this particular network, this particular show, almost a year ago, we were pointing the finger and trying to put that light on Elizabeth Warren. And somebody like yourself who ran against the Beto O'Rourke, putting that light on who these people really are. They're not progressive champions. They shouldn't be championed as progressives because they're not.
And Warren and my opponent, Tsunami Ramirez, share a few billionaire donors.
Yes.
Yeah. And to see, so-called progressives endorsing her the moment that she announces her bid for office, that looks a little bit like campaign coordination. But
did your opponent do the same thing? Take a DNA test to prove her heritage, or no? No. Did she pull an Elizabeth Warren too, or no?
Kind of, sort of, but not exactly.
Kind of, sort of, but not exactly. I mean, it's so great that we're having you on now with all this Elizabeth Warren stuff going on, because we heard about this stuff, and I was like, oh, her opponent's trying to pull an Elizabeth Warren over here.
Well, there's just a lot of similarities, too, when it comes to that part. I mean, with the Working Families Party endorsement, both going to Elizabeth Warren and your opponent, but,
And they're billionaire donors.
And they're billionaire donors, so.
Yeah.
Sema, when you're elected senator of Texas, will you stand up and speak up for Julian Assange?
I will, and for anyone who has journalistic integrity.
Yeah. How important is doing that? Like, why is it so important, and specifically?
Well, because the journalists who are supposed to be reporting the news and holding elected officials accountable are not able to do that because of the corporate interests that drive this this propaganda machine. So we need to break up the media conglomerates. We need to ensure that the journalists who initially got into this industry to report on the news are able to do so without those constraints or those restrictions of the corporate donors.
Yeah. Would you demand a full pardon for him?
I would. I
That's
think
a great
about
answer.
that because, what he did and what was extremely important and something that we needed to know. Look at what the Afghanistan war has revealed is that one was wasteful, but two, look at the damage we've done to our military men and women.
Yeah,
we're so quick to fund the NDAA and recruit our young men and women to war, but we're not quick to ensure that they are taken care of and they are automatically enrolled to receive VA benefits, that they're not in a waiting line getting prescription drugs filled or seeing their therapist or just getting to a VA hospital. In South Texas, there is no VA hospital. Yeah. They literally have to drive 4 to 6 hours to San Antonio to see their doctor. And that's something that I do not support, in ensuring that we no longer go into war based on lies, and that our allies are not being bombed in the middle of the day, or hospitals aren't being bombed, is something that we need to take into consideration when these journalists are doing their job and informing the people of what our government is doing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great answer. And, there's some people on the chat. It's like, they like you a lot because they say you're not doing what Beto did. And he used Spanglish to try to sway his voters in his favor and stuff. And you're a true progressive. And we're glad that you joined us here today. Copernicus Thinker, thank you for the super chats. We really appreciate it. It says 3 cheers for Sema's view about Elizabeth Warren. They like that, what you had to say. And somebody said, excellent reporting by Warren from Fee. And hey, I just want to thank you for coming out, Sam. I wish you nothing but the best of luck in your race. When is your primary again?
Oh, my primary is March 3rd. March 3rd, 2020.
That is the same day as
right
ours.
Super Tuesday is ours.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
So, what we need is boots on the ground. We need volunteers. We definitely do need donations. So if you love Bernie if you love Bernie and don't like what Elizabeth Warren pulled, then donate to our campaign and don't let colonizers win. That's
that. Don't let colonizers win. I love that. Okay.
Yeah, don't let colonizers colonize our progressive movement.
That's exactly what's happening. Thank you for saying it.
Thank you so much for joining us, Sema. You can find all of Sema's information. We have her website up. I believe it is Sema. Let me make sure I read it right. Sema 4 Texas or Tejas. If I'm Beto O'Rourke, .com.
All right.
Semafortexas.com. There we go.
For Pasta Jardula
and Fiorella,
Johnny Sue on the 1s and 2s with Sema Hernandez.
Combo out.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining us, Sema.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey.